Looking back on the OJ Simpson trial 30 years later, grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's go back. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Gen X Unfiltered, the podcast.
What's up, everybody?
Before we get into today's topic, I just want to do a quick little disclaimer, trigger warning. We will be talking about a lot of sensitive issues such as, domestic abuse, racism, death, murder, all that kind of stuff. So please just be aware before you dive into this podcast, we will be discussing those things. So, listen at your own caution. I guess is what
viewer discretion advised.
Viewer discretion, yes. I'm always awkward when I say that, but we just want to,
No, it's smart to do it, yeah.
Be upfront with everybody.
It's a heavy topic.
So, as the title states, we are looking back 30 years ago was the untimely and horrific death of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman.
30 years, that is crazy.
30 years.
Yeah, I know.
That's nuts.
June 12th, 1994.
Wow.
So we thought, over the years, it's been the topic of many conversations, many discussions, but many analyses and all that. I can't say that word. Analyses. So we just thought we would kind of do a really overview, broad discussion on why we kind of think that it was the trial of the century and still is the trial of the century. I mean, I'm not sure anything's really going to beat it at this point.
No, it was massive.
It was
massive.
It
was everywhere.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly before we get into it, though, Steve, when this was happening, when you were a young tot, were you aware of it? Did you watch it? Did you follow it? Just really quickly.
I don't think you could avoid it from it. I remember, it was literally everywhere. It was on every TV station, all the news. Obviously, CNN was covering it all the time, so I don't think you could avoid it. So absolutely, I remember it. We watched the verdict live in my chemistry class, I believe it was. They rolled the TV in for it. I remember everyone watching it. So, yeah, absolutely remember this thing.
What about you, Eric?
Oh, it was like Steve said, it was impossible to avoid this trial.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching regular TV, being a young guy, not really interested in the trial necessarily, watching regular TV all the time, shows are broken in progress with breaking news from the OJ trial with some sort of a new update or a new thing that had happened.
Isn't it crazy though? I'm sitting here listening to you guys say that and I'm thinking 30 years ago. And I mean, we didn't even have really internet, social media, none of that. And it was still so huge and we still all knew it and it was a part of everyday life. Could you imagine now?
Oh, God, yeah. Imagine
crazy.
With TikTok and Instagram and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be a whole
crazy.
other...
Me, myself, I definitely knew. I didn't know who OJ Simpson was. I just knew this big trial was going on. I mean, I spent hours and hours watching it. I immersed myself in it. Me and my grandpa used to watch it together. We'd discuss it. We'd talk about it, yada, yada, yada. And even through the past 30 years, I've definitely, full disclosure, I've rewatched the trial numerous times. It's just fascinating to me.
It's still, it's still a huge topic.
It's fascinating. And
OJ was in the news right up until he passed away a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just take a little step back and, like I said, a really quick, brief, broad overview for anybody who's listening who may not know some of the details and just to refresh our own memories because it was 30 years ago and there's been a lot of stuff that's come out and, all that stuff. So we'll just get right into it then.
Let's do it.
On the night of June 12, 1994, O.J. Simpson's ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman, were stabbed to death outside of her house in Los Angeles. Their murders and the subsequent arrest of the retired NFL star ignited a series of events that America's legal system and media had rarely seen before. That's fair. It was crazy.
Yeah. Talking about how big it was. Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah. So here is a really quick, because it's refreshing my memory too, a really quick timeline of the night that this happened. 6:30 p.m. after attending their daughter's dance recital alongside her ex-husband, Nicole has dinner with friends and family at the restaurant Mezzaluna. I'm sure we've all heard that name. It was everywhere. Where Goldman worked as a waiter. Nicole's mother accidentally leaves her eyeglasses at the restaurant, and Ron Goldman volunteers to stop by Nicole's house to drop them off. There's been tons of interviews with his family members and friends, and it's just, it's like, oh my goodness, it's just such bad.
Well,
What a
if
crazy circumstance.
Like,
Right?
if
you know,
those glasses hadn't been forgotten,
Yeah.
would we be even having this conversation today?
I don't
would it
know.
have been a double, murder? Like,
But maybe none.
Yeah.
No murder. I mean,
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
no murder.
who knows? But those eyeglasses, because it's from my understanding that was why he went to her house, was to return them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And what happened next? We all know.
we all know. Yeah.
So then from 10:41 to 10:45 p.m., Brian Cato Kalin, we all know that name,
Cato Kalin, yes.
who was OJ's house guest at his Rockingham mansion just a couple of miles down the road from Nicole's house, hears a thumping noise on the opposite of his wall and goes outside to investigate. Now, there's a lot of stuff that happened in between there. Like, if you watch the trailer heard, like, that him and OJ went to McDonald's before that and yada, yada, yada. But like we said, there's so much information. Like, we could talk for 12 hours.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So we're just trying to keep it very broad here.
Yeah.
10:50 to 10:55, a neighbor spots Nicole's white Akita dog by itself barking, and he has bloody paws.
That's right. I remember hearing
Yeah.
what they always said. The
That's an
dog, they
image.
figured the
Yeah.
dog knew everything.
Oh, well, the dog
Yeah.
definitely knew
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
If that dog could talk, right?
Yeah.
This trial's
Yeah.
over.
11:01 p.m. Waiting since 10:25 p.m., limousine driver Alan Park sees OJ exit his house. A few minutes later, Park drives OJ to the Los Angeles International Airport for his flight to Chicago. And again, there's a whole bunch of testimony from the limo driver about the demeanor of OJ and if he was rushed and what he saw and the bags and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's just so much. 11:45, OJ takes off to Chicago. So he got on the plane. He went. He
That's
made
right.
his flight.
Because I remember
Yeah.
that was a whole thing, him being in Chicago and what did or didn't happen there. I
And-
remember that always been a sort of a question.
Over
around
the
this.
course of the trial and all the like nitty gritty of the timeline and stuff, I mean, there was it was a big enough window, but it was a small window for this crime to have happened. And I mean, a lot of people have said, and the evidence has shown that it was very messy. It was quick. It was, in the heat of the moment. Nobody was trying to cover nothing up.
No, I mean, based
no.
on all the evidence that was found and everything like that.
Yeah.
And even just, I remember them saying, like, just how brutal of a crime it was. It was not, like,
Yeah.
it was a strictly, this is
Crime of
this
passion.
is a personal
Yeah.
thing. It was not a,
So that's sort of the brief timeline of the night of the murders of what happened. So on June 13th, 1994, OJ Simpson becomes a suspect. So at 12:10 a.m., Nicole's dog leads neighbors to the dead bodies of Ron and herself, which lie near the gate. So again, it was pretty much from what I remember, the testimony being, it was dark and overgrown, but like it was in full view of people.
Yeah.
It wasn't like hidden in the house. It was there.
yeah, it was like right at the front steps or something like that, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah, I
so-
remember, like, the walkway, like, up from the sidewalk, they were, like,
Yeah,
right
it
there.
wasn't far.
Yeah.
4:15 a.m., OJ checks into a hotel in Chicago. At 4:30 a.m., the police arrive at OJ's house in LA to inform him of Nicole's death, but instead discover his blood-stained Bronco and a bloody glove that matches one near Goldman's body. We all know that, Mark Furman found the glove. It was behind the unit, the wall where
that
Cato
was
said he heard the
whole
thump.
thing was right because Cato told them that, hey, I heard something behind
Yeah.
my house or
A
whatever,
thump.
and they went back there, and that's where they found the glove.
Now, I mean, Mark Furman has a whole podcast we could talk about on himself, like we said, but I mean, it was unfortunate that he found it. I mean, everybody has their own interpretations of what he may or may not have done, but based strictly on evidence, I mean, he found,
He
the
found
glove.
it was
Yeah.
behind that house it was found.
yeah,
There's theories as to how it got there.
yeah. Which
Yeah.
we'll get into a
Yeah.
little bit. But 10:45 a.m., with a search warrant in hand, the police search OJ's mansion and find even more blood traces on the property, including in his Bronco. 12 p.m., returning to Los Angeles after being informed of his ex-wife's death, OJ arrives at the mansion where he's handcuffed and then taken to the police station where he's questioned for hours. Really briefly on the stuff that, like, I've read and watched and yada, yada, yada. He was questioned by the police, but it was less than an hour.
Yes,
so
I
quick,
watched
yeah.
it.
It was less than an hour being a suspect in a double murder.
And with no lawyer, from what I remember.
Yeah.
Which
With
was
no
like,
lawyer.
That was, I remember that came as a big bone of contention with the prosecution because they're like, you had him
Yeah.
Yeah.
on his own with no lawyers willing to talk,
And let
Yeah.
him walk
and
away.
you let him walk away after an hour.
Yeah.
Like, that's,
What are you thinking?
they
Now-
most people grill him,
Yeah.
ask
Now-
him every single question.
Well, here's the thing. Admittedly, the two main, and you guys probably recognize these names if you know anything about the trial, but like Detective Lang and Detective Van Adder, like they admittedly, I think Detective Van Adder has actually passed away now, but Detective Lang always does interviews, and he admittedly said, he's like, it was the juice. It was OJ Simpson.
They were
like,
starstruck.
what? Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, why would he lie? Like, there's no
Well,
way he could do this.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, he had...
He has charisma. He knows what to say and not
And
say.
OJ's personality, like, OJ, I mean, we were sort of talking about that, like, unless you're, like, he was a massive... in football, he was huge.
Yeah.
But after his career, like, he was doing some Monday Night Football stuff, but he was not the biggest star. But
No.
his personality and persona was always that of, like, a friendly guy. Like, he wasn't, like...
Very outgoing, friendly.
But even on the field, he was never like one of those players like the refrigerator or one of these guys that was like tough,
Well-
hard, like mean,
No.
Look,
like
he-
vicious type. Like his personality was always very
He has charisma.
affable and friendly and nice.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So these guys are probably thinking, this is a horrible. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way.
Well, of
OJ,
course.
based on
right?
what we
OJ,
know when we
we
see on
know-
TV, could have done this.
Yeah, the the face of Hertz rental car company
Yeah.
and isotoner gloves, which
No,
he
you're
just
getting
wear
way
them.
too
Yeah.
far ahead there, Steve. Chill. Follow the timeline. No,
Yeah.
just kidding. No, but really quickly about the whole returning, because this is a big discussion in lots of places, like the whole returning. Because again, you have to remember, at this point in time, there's cameras everywhere. There's cameras at her house on Bundy. There's cameras outside of his house. Like they're just everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's the paparazzi and all that
well,
stuff we're talking about, right?
the
Like
news.
Yeah,
and stuff,
not security cameras.
No. Like the news was there when
Yeah.
OJ got out of the car and got cuffed. Like they saw him.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things in conspiracy theories and whatever that we'll never know was his friend / lawyer at the time, Robert Kardashian. You all know that name. He was there. OJ gets out of the car. He grabs one of OJ's bags and he has it in his hand. Because again, everything's recorded. He has it in his hand the whole time. The police never ask for it, even though it's evidence that OJ's bringing back with him.
Yeah.
The Louis Vuitton bag. Robert Kardashian ends up taking it with him. Clearly, the assumption is that there's stuff in there that,
He doesn't want the police to find.
Or-
yeah, evidence or
And-
something.
Yeah.
Robert Kardashian was asked about it years later, and he didn't say there was nothing in there, but he didn't, say there was something. And he, that's a whole
Yeah.
other discussion because, it was his best friend or whatever at the time, but
But still a lawyer, so
he,
there's
he,
There's a conflict there.
Yeah.
well, his thoughts about his innocent guilt changed very quickly, but that's a whole other thing. So, I mean, Robert Kardashian never said what was in that bag, but I mean, the assumption there is it was something.
there was
Yeah.
something in there that he, the fact that he grabbed it right away and took it.
Yeah.
But the worst part
There was
is he
something that
didn't
they-
even grab it and run. Like, again, you can watch all this footage. He grabbed it. He was talking to OJ while the cops were talking to him, and like they were on the property, and he's just standing there with the bag. The cops had every ample opportunity to ask for it, but even the detective said, we just didn't even think.
In the
Just-
circus that was happening.
Yeah.
They were talking. They may not even really realize that, hey,
Yeah.
you have a bag, and as you and I are talking, I'm just, hey, yeah, we're, just
just
kind of
handing it
grab it
off.
to me. Now it's beside me,
But
and,
that's-
trying to be cool about it. You may not even
Yeah.
No, but
necessarily be...
Make that connection that there's something, potentially fishing going on here.
well, or just that, he's a suspect. He's
Yeah.
coming home for you to arrest him.
Yeah.
You
Take
think they
his
would just grab
crap.
everything,
And,
yeah.
I mean, and again, because there was so much like attention on this right from we're talking like this was less than 12 hours after they were murdered, and
Yeah.
all this attention's on it. I mean, there was just a lot of chaos everywhere.
Well, it was that's the thing. I mean, now, it's easy to look back, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years later, people watching this footage to, sort of be the Monday morning quarterback on it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
of course,
But that's the thing. There was so much. It was under such a microscope. This thing, like, it was crazy how much attention this got.
So June 15th, 1994, 2 days after OJ becomes a suspect, Robert Shapiro officially becomes OJ Simpson's attorney, replacing Howard Weitzman, and takes over lead counsel for OJ. From what I've heard, Howard Weitzman wasn't a criminal lawyer. He was just like a business lawyer that he had. And of course, you call the lawyer you have. And then, once
Yeah.
they realize,
They'll
hey,
refer you to the proper.
Well, once
Yeah.
they realize, hey, we
Proper
might be
specialization.
facing like double
Yeah.
murder charges.
Yeah.
Here. You need to.
This is not a business lawyer's
you need to.
turf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that introduced Robert Shapiro for the first time. Yeah, that's whatever. Throughout the course of the trial, during the beginning of the trial, we've all heard the term the dream team.
Yes.
Yeah.
The dream team.
First associated with a basketball team like the U.S. Olympic basketball team.
Yeah.
Now they're calling like OJ's lawyer team
His
like
legal
the dream
counsel,
team.
yeah.
The dream
So
team, yeah.
eventually, and this all happened through different times. They weren't all hired at once. They were all hired for different things. But eventually, the dream team, and I'm sure there's others that just weren't as prominent, but it was Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, Barry Scheck, Peter Neufeld, Gerald Ullman, Carl Douglas, and Sean Hawley. Like, that was just the people in court. I mean, there's a million other people.
Behind the scenes,
how many paralegals and other lawyers do they have in their firms work? Yeah, like this must have cost OJ. Like I remember hearing it. Like,
here's the thing: it estimated to cost OJ Simpson $50,000 a day to have this dream team. I mean, money well spent.
God damn.
Like his legal team won, so I guess but that's an insane amount of money. Like we were talking about OJ before, like he wasn't like the biggest celebrity. Like he couldn't have had that big a net worth.
But
like,
you know what he did?
What?
When he was in jail, arrested, there was no limitations onto what he could or couldn't do as far as earning money.
His funds, yeah.
So his agent would take in things for him to sign, pictures of him and his lawyers in court. He would sign. He made like almost $3 million just signing memorabilia.
Wow,
to pay for the defense.
And just sell it for like $25 a pop or something.
Oh my God.
That's
so
crazy.
it would be a picture of him and Johnny in court.
Yeah.
And Johnny and him would sign it, and it would sell. Like, yeah.
I had no idea that was happening.
Yeah.
So he was making money while the trial was happening.
To fund his
defense.
Yeah,
that's nuts.
I mean,
And I can imagine how the demand for something like that would have been through the roof at that time.
Well, I mean, of course,
obviously sports memorabilia is always popular, but that moment in time for him specifically, I mean,
he had to make money, I guess. Like I said, money well spent.
I'm shocked he was allowed to do that, but I don't know how that
because he wasn't
but I guess he was still not.
He was only in like a county jail.
He was still innocent, right?
Yeah.
Right? He was in a county jail. He was just being held. Yeah, he wasn't convicted. He wasn't a felon. He wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
So, and his agent said, I watched a documentary with his agent. The agent's like, literally the next day, he's like, I need to make money to pay for this. So what can we do?
What can we do? Clearly, I'm not going anywhere. So what do we do?
On June 16th, the funerals are held for Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. There's lots of discussion about what his demeanor was like at the funeral. Like, he was crying, he was whatever, yada, yada, yada. But again, there's footage of him walking in and out of the funeral. Like, everything was just everywhere.
Well, that's the thing, because it was especially being in LA. I mean, it would have been anywhere, but you know, the paparazzi news and all that stuff.
Everything was covered.
Yeah.
So then we come to June 17th, which is another very poignant date in the timeline of all this stuff happening. Because just when you thought things couldn't get crazier, it got crazy.
They found a way.
The Bronco freeway chase.
Oh my God, I forgot about this.
Should we call it a chase? No.
It was what they call it, a slow speed chase.
It was such a bizarre,
such a weird scene. Like, you've got this, Bronco driving down the freeway with this like fleet of police cars behind it.
Well,
none of them really actively trying to stop anything.
No. But let's just talk about why this how this came to, right? Yeah. So he was formally charged with murdering Nicole and Ron on this day. He was staying at his lawyer's house. I think it was Robert Kardashian. He was staying there. He was like under suicide watch. They were getting him medical attention. They had made a deal with the police station that he was going to voluntarily surrender at 11 a.m. that day. Somehow, some way, he snuck out of the house. Nobody knew where he went. Him and AC, his best bud, snuck out of the house. He left a suicide note that we all have heard. Suicide note, whatever you want to call it. He left it. Robert Shapiro or Robert Kardashian, I can't remember which one, get on camera, do a press conference, read the note.
Yep.
And he's on the lam.
That's right. I remember that. The note it definitely sounded like it was a farewell to apology, farewell letter.
I mean, it's up to interpretation. I wouldn't say it was necessarily an apology. I wouldn't say it was just more like, hey, remember me, I'm awesome. I'm not what everybody says I am.
That's right. Think of me as the OJ you know.
That was it. He remembered but it definitely sounded like he was.
Well, So he's on the lam, right? The lawyers have no idea where he is, allegedly. He's gone. The police have now done a press conference saying he's officially wanted. He was supposed to be here at 11. He's not. What is going on? How can you lose him? You have cameras everywhere. Like, how are we losing him? You're with your lawyers.
But if you're the prosecution, you must be loving this, because isn't this basically like an admission of guilt? You're like fleeing.
I mean, in theory, but
It doesn't look. It's not a good look.
no.
but I mean, you'll learn later, like that all that stuff never even made it to trial, so they couldn't even present that evidence.
Oh, weird.
So he
crazy.
is later spotted off the freeway in a white Ford Bronco with his friend Al Cowlings in the driver's seat. So there's Al Cowlings calls 911. No, Detective Lang has OJ's cell phone. Calls it because they're watching this on TV with the cameras and the helicopters. Calls him. Ends up a conversation between him and Al Cowlings is like he's in the back. He has a gun to his head. He's this. He's
That's
that.
right. I
Yada,
remember
yada,
that.
yada.
I forgot they were because that call was recorded, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all recorded.
It's AC. It's AC. Damn it! You know
Yeah.
who this is or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously they've been told he has a gun. I mean, there's obviously a level of threat there, depending whether he's gonna use it on himself or other people. So yeah, they're slow speed chasing him. I mean, at this point though, too, you have to remember like the freeways started getting full of quote unquote fans.
No, that
Yeah.
was, I remember the footage, and there was like traffic stopped on whatever was the
Yeah.
405 or whatever
Yeah.
highway it was, but it's and all the people in the overpass, even when it's going into they're going through the city, like
And I just-
people running up and like banging on the windows and stuff
And I
like
just
that.
remember reading Marcia Clark's book, and she talks about this because she was watching it, and all she said was, "Don't these people realize that he's being charged with a brutal murder, and they're all out here like
Yeah.
free
Like
the
cheering him.
juice,
Yeah.
go, like what?"
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's mind blowing, right? Like, yes, he wasn't convicted at that point now, but he's getting charged.
Yeah, no, and that was always sort of definitely the trial and all the coverage. It's that the fact that there's two people that were horribly, brutally murdered always seemed to kind of get lost in the noise
Well,
of
and
everything
that's-
else with this trial.
Yeah.
So it was an estimated 95 million people tuned in to that pursuit on TV.
Oh my God.
It actually interrupted the NBA finals. I'm sure some people were pissed.
Oh, probably.
Oh, yeah.
Because it would have been, especially because they're in LA, right? So it was like 3 hours. So it would have been
Yeah.
like, what time was it? Like 4:30, 5 o'clock at night? Local
I
time? So it would have been
don't
like
know the time.
prime time in the East
Yeah.
Coast.
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
So
Everyone. And
yeah, I mean, it was just it was. I think people were because I remember I watched it. I mean, I remember.
No, I remember seeing it. I just don't know if I watched
No,
it
I totally
live
watched
or
it.
not.
I remember
but
seeing
I
it.
definitely remember it happening. I just don't
Yeah.
know if I watched it live or if it was because a replay or newscast about it.
Yeah.
But I 100% remember it because it was
I-
crazy.
I totally watched it. So, like, I think everybody was just like, "What? What's going
What-
on?" Like, all right, like, okay. So then they convince him to go to his house. He just says he wants to see his mom. Blah 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 blah. They convince him to go to his house. They drive through the neighborhood. They pull up. Then there's like a standoff in the drive. Again, you have to remember, like, he has a gun. He's told them he has a gun in the car. So
Yeah.
you just never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You don't want him to harm himself, and you don't want him to harm anybody else. So there's like a little bit of a standoff, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
blah blah blah. Anyway, he ends up surrendering. He gets out. He gets arrested. Gets pulled away in the car. Again, you can go on YouTube and watch all this footage.
It's all there. Yeah.
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 So, on July 22nd, 1994, OJ Simpson pleads not guilty, and this is the I don't know if this happened. It must have happened then, but this says he pleads. I think you guys will remember this. Absolutely, positively, 100% not guilty.
I remember him saying 100% not guilty.
I do remember saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. So then it became the pretrial preparations. One of the big things was that he wanted every defendant has a right to a speedy trial, which is a certain amount of time you have to go to trial.
Yeah.
Because they
yeah.
just want to get it done. So he wanted to do that because clearly he doesn't want to be sitting in jail. He wants to figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you want to force, also force the prosecution to
Get moving.
get their ducks in real fast or
Yeah.
something. Maybe they miss some things.
So- So on September 9th, 1994, the prosecutors seek life without parole. They decided not to pursue the death penalty. I think that was probably smart. I think they were just, obviously it's harder to get a conviction when the penalty is death.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I didn't realize California had that, to be
I
honest. I forgot.
think, I mean, this, whatever, in 1994 they did. And I think that also too, like, trying to get a death penalty conviction on a quote unquote celebrity,
Not easy.
not going to
yeah.
happen.
No, that's the it's one thing to put him
Yeah.
in jail, one thing to sentence him to death.
So
Yes, yeah.
they decided to do the life without parole. November 3rd, 1994, the jury is selected. I mean, we all should have known that it was going to be chaos when the jury selection took 2+ months.
What? It
2
took
plus
2
months.
2
months,
months? Really?
to do
Wow.
the jury selection?
Now, I've admittedly read more. I've read Marsha Clark's book. I've read all the lawyers' books. So, like, I know a little bit more inside stuff than you guys probably do. But, like, I mean, it was just insanity. I mean, unfortunately, the prosecution right from the start didn't have a lot of luck with getting the jurors they wanted. I mean, the defense admits and says, and understandably, they wanted a black female jury is what they wanted. They wanted females, and they wanted them to be
They're
black.
looking at someone for a group to be more sympathetic in their minds to OJ.
That's
now,
always
the prosecution wanted white women because of the whole domestic abuse, which we'll talk about quickly.
Right, and you know, a white woman was viciously murdered here, right?
Exactly.
Well, that's both sides are trying to stack this jury in their favor. So it's like they all have their kind of, we're looking for this kind of person, they're looking for this kind of person. How do we
So I guess
fight it out to get whatever they want?
Was it like a mixed jury, or was it like?
It says here that the initial jury is selected and is made up of 4 men and 8 women. 8 of the jurors are black, 1 is Hispanic, 1 person is white, and 2 are of mixed race. Now, Marsha Clark right off the top says, "Oh shit, we're in trouble."
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge
It's going to be a challenge, right? Like, I mean, it's just going to be a challenge. The defense, meanwhile, was like having a party because they got mostly women, mostly black women, and then, a black male. And
they got what they wanted,
yeah. I mean, and it's all like a chess game, right? You're picking people to decide the fate of somebody.
No, exactly. And like you said, like they said, the prosecution has who they want. The defense has who they want, and usually they're completely opposite. So, to try and find some sort of middle ground there.
You have to think about it. Like, despite the fact that you could have people up there who are 100% completely willing to just be unbiased and based it on facts, we also have the human element.
Well, a
white woman who's listening to another white woman be brutally murdered. Or a black, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to automatically have biases towards, like, ooh, you sympathize more or not. It just is what it is.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's, one of our trigger warnings, right? Like, there's some racial topics we're talking about right now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, back in, like, the 94, like, racial tension was at an all-time high in L.A., right?
We're going to get there.
That's okay. I didn't know if you're going to touch on that. I was going to wait to see, but that's a huge...
Of course.
Yeah, a huge piece of this.
Thing that's kind of looms over this entire trial.
We haven't even gotten to the trial yet. Don't worry, we're getting there.
Yeah.
All right,
no, that's fine, but
I'm jumping ahead, but I'm just like...
Oh, no,
these details are kind of crazy that are coming out now.
I know. I'm just trying to give, like, background so then we can, like, discuss these things a little bit. January 18th, 1995, Johnny Cochran officially takes the reins for the defense. He becomes the lead counsel. And Judge Ito also rules that the jury is allowed to hear evidence of Simpson's alleged domestic abuse towards Brown, which was a huge win for the prosecution. Their whole basis of their case was it was a crime of passion, and he had, leading up to this, I mean, there's reports, there's evidence, there's police calls.
You can listen to those tapes, and they're horrific.
There was horrific domestic abuse, and it was documented all the way from early in their relationship. And so, the prosecution desperately wanted that evidence to be in there to show the character of who OJ Simpson was.
Yeah, to show behind that smiling facade of...
He's not the guy from the Hertz commercial.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah. And this is him. Listen to him with his wife, and, she's in a closet.
Yeah.
Being like, he's going to kill me. Get here now. You know who he is. You've been here like 10 times.
Yeah.
And some evidence was allowed in, but so much was not. And I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head reasons why it wasn't, but like she literally had diaries in her own handwriting talking about, if I die, this is that she made like everything. Basically, she predicted her own death.
Isn't that what Jenner had said, her friend?
Kris Jenner.
Kris Jenner said basically that was like something like she said like she told me she's going to die.
I mean, she told lots of people, and the problem was
something happens to me.
This is what happened.
This is who did it.
Yeah.
The diaries were not allowed in. So Nicole's own words that were written by her were not allowed in. And I mean, that was a huge blow to the prosecution, and it blew up their case because again, their whole case was start with domestic abuse, make people see who OJ Simpson is.
Show like there's a history here of violence. So is it hard to imagine going from slapping your wife around to murder?
Well, and of course,
right?
not everybody.
What show is that
the progression, like he is capable of violence.
Yeah,
and again, like not everybody who is that violent ends up murdering people, but
no.
it just shows the character. It's potential. It's there. It could happen.
Yeah.
It's not unlikely. We're not talking about somebody who was a perfect citizen and never had a run with the law and treated his wife with respect.
That's exactly.
Right?
You're trying to show that character.
So that was kind of the whole basis of their case. That was the motive, I guess, not basis, but that was the motive for why this happened. Jealousy, and there was evidence leading up. Her own sister talk, whatever. So this kind of comes to the first big point of why or how this became the trial of the century, or however you want to word it. But Judge Ito rules that cameras can be in the courtroom.
Yes.
Which, help me out, is this kind of uncommon for this period of time, or is this like a newer thing?
Well, in 1994, you had court TV. So there was stuff that was televised, but it wasn't as big of a thing because it didn't, back then there wasn't live streaming on the internet where it is now. So that wasn't a thing. I think the Menendez trial was televised. There was things that were televised, but it was a lot less than what is televised now.
Yeah.
And again, there is a very salacious story too, right? Famous celebrity, murder, infidelity, domestic abuse, all this stuff. And
so basically just the celebrities. But not to mention that all the way up until this even started, it had already become a media circus. We saw footage of, the forensic people collecting blood. We saw footage of them pulling the bodies out. We saw footage of the bodies there. We saw footage of OJ being arrested. So already people's interest was piqued and sparked.
It was a media, because I was watching a video or something about when we were talking about doing this. I was watching some videos and stuff like that. They said basically the last time a trial this happened would have been the Lindbergh baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not very often that a celebrity of any status
is on trial
for something this serious. You hear about, obviously there's celebrities DUIs and things like that, but double murder.
But I think,
it's rare.
That in itself is a big deal, of course, and a big thing. But again, I think it's just because there has been so much attention on this, even before they got to trial, that it was already, people were drooling for details.
Yeah, because of the celebrity is what I'm saying. Though.
Yeah, but
if
the
OJ
Bronco chase.
OJ, no one would have.
No.
Not that they wouldn't care, but.
Not nearly as big of a circus as
at
it
all.
became.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So everything was televised. Even now when you watch court cases on TV, when they do sidebars, the cameras will move. There's rules. The judge has the right to put rules into place and say, see that, whatever. But there was no rules. Literally you saw every waking inch and moment of that courtroom. Every single moment of that courtroom you saw.
Yeah.
Lawyers constantly, mostly the Dream Team, but the prosecution as well, but lawyers constantly after every day in court would do press conferences.
Well, a lot of these people are made a lot of money on this trial after the fact, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But
think how many books came out after this trial was done.
Did any of the defense team write books, or was it
of
all the
course they
prosecution?
wrote books.
I wasn't sure.
Books.
I know.
And why not write books, right? You're part of a major thing. And I love that they all wrote books because you can get an inside scoop.
And that's also good, too, because you can see both sides
the thought process of both sides.
I have no qualms about people writing books about it. Whatever, do your thing. But I'm just saying, while this trial's going on, remember this jury, Judge Ito sequestered the jury. So the jury can't see any of this stuff. But this is what happened. So the trial was so tainted with half of the prosecution's witnesses couldn't even be called because they sold their story to
a few of them
hard copy.
The National Enquirer or something.
So everybody just wanted to make money. It was just a mess. How much was credible? What was credible? You have Johnny Cochran and Robert Shapiro doing press conferences and doing this, and it's just it was just what is even real, and it got just so out of control that I don't even think Ito could control it.
That was the thing. I think it was having the cameras in there was. It's not a bad thing. At least it lets everyone kind of see what's happening, make sure everything's on the up and up, so that people can't say, "Oh, what happened here? What happened there? It didn't happen."
Yeah,
I think it just got way out of control.
We also are dealing with again the dream Johnny Cochran. He's a smooth talker. He has charisma. He's good at what he did.
He's smart.
He's smart.
He knows how to,
absolutely. But he played it. He worked it, and it worked because Judge Ito was starstruck with him. Marsha Clark was one of the people that was probably the most, I don't know, lack of a better word, picked on as far as because of the cameras.
She had
Sad.
a lot of scrutiny came her way, like even like appearance, looks.
It was more about that than anything else. It's
not stuff that didn't really have anything to do with her performance as a lawyer at all.
no, not
No.
at all.
Like,
Sadly,
if
that's
she
a
stood-
double-edged sword for females still. But
Well,
yeah.
she would be sitting at the table and the cameras would catch a glimpse of her like snarling at something. Well, you know what? I'd probably be snarling sometimes too when you ever listen to people tell bull crap, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, you know, but everything. And, you know, she was going through a horrific time in her personal life. She was having a divorce. Her husband was trying to take sole custody of her kids. She's in the trial of the son. Like, it was just
It's like
reading her book, you can feel the pressure and the stress and
Oh
the
my
anxiety.
God. Like how did she keep it all together?
Barely. I mean, you know, just
Props to her, that's-
insanity. I mean, she was dedicated to her job, and I'm not saying she was perfect at her job. I'm just saying she was very dedicated, and her and Christopher Darden had so many hurdles. Just is what it is.
Yeah.
Some from because of their own mistakes, some not. It was just a mess.
Oh yeah, no, it was.
So I think that, and then we talk about the media circus. This trial's going on again, a trial for horrific double murder, no matter who it is.
Mm-hmm.
We have like every night on SNL doing skits about.
I remember the dancing Itos on the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like they're having like they made a joke out of like Judge Ito.
Yeah.
And having him do a little like a bunch of them do like a dance number. And
That's
it's like,
right,
well,
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. Are we forgetting that like two people are dead here? Like,
No,
Yeah.
I remember on Saturday Night Live them doing bits about
yeah.
Like you almost forgot that it was a real life and you thought it was just like a TV show.
But that's-
It took on a life of its own
that's-
outside the court.
What
Yeah.
I'm saying, it became
Yeah.
such a circus that the whole fact of why this man is sitting in the defense box and why
Yeah.
that there's two people that were brutally murdered got completely lost and overlooked.
Yeah, it's true. Oh my God, I just had a flashback to this SNL skit I think you're talking about. Was it the one where like Tim Meadows plays OJ and like he's on Monday Night Football?
I mean, there was tons
No,
of
there
them.
was that one, and he writes out, "I did it."
He writes out I did it on like the replay
trying
screen.
to show
Yeah, he's trying to show like the play and
Yeah.
he's mapping it out with like the white pencil.
Yeah.
And he maps out I did it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, and again, like, so 1994, you go back to the time, like, this was, again, before, like, internet was, I mean, it wasn't mainstream by any means, but I mean, it was
No, it
existed in
wasn't.
the back ends of things. But I mean, 1994, there was no internet, no live streaming. Email was just becoming a thing. So
Yeah.
that was, like, really exciting for all the 24-hour news crew because they had email. They could
Yeah.
instantly.
Well, the fact that they called OJ in a cell phone when he was
Yeah.
in the Broncos, like that was OJ,
but
not very common cell phones back in the day.
No.
it was crazy. Like, CNN was just 24 hours OJ.
Well, that was because that was sort of the start. At that time, there was no need. Now, like there's
No.
24-hour news channels. Like there's local ones for the for.
Well, you just
trial
have
and stuff
live
like that. You
streaming,
have,
though,
like,
now.
national ones. You have international ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the
the
thing
24-hour news stations ate that up.
Well, they needed
People,
it.
they-
Yeah,
I mean,
they just
and how
milked
could
it.
how could they not? It was everything there. And so another thing also that I just kind of thought of, the reason why this was such a big deal and had so much public interest for so long was because if you think about it, most big cases that happen, it's like 4 years before they go to trial. People
Yeah.
forget stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
there's, but this all happened. So like it was 7 months after the murders that his trial started. So there
Yeah.
wasn't time for people to forget, right?
No.
Like it
One
was
thing
still
just rolled
super
into
fresh.
yeah.
And tactic, I mean, they did that on purpose. Johnny Cochran didn't want people to forget who OJ was, that he was rotting in jail. He wanted, let's get this going.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and like the longer like the trial goes on or it gets delayed, the more people can find out about OJ's past. Other things that might change their mind on this guy.
No,
And
exactly. And more time that the prosecution has more time
Well, yeah.
to interview people, collect
That's-
evidence.
That's the smartest tactics the defense does that is because they want the prosecution. Because the prosecution's the one that has the burden of proof, right?
Well, no,
they have to
exactly.
prove it.
Yeah.
Defense just has to sit there and be like, nah, that didn't happen. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. They don't have to, they literally, it's a prosecution. And so
Yeah.
the less time they got,
No, you want to
Yep.
keep
Better.
them. You want them have them on their heels, scrambling to put together their case. So because your job is just to poke holes in it.
Yeah.
That's
so
it.
I think cameras was one of the biggest obvious reasons why, this
Well,
was such a big deal.
It's cameras with this, again, not OJ in that chair. Cameras in there wouldn't make a difference.
No.
OJ
Well,
Simpson,
of course.
cameras. That's why this was the trial of the century.
Of course. So January 24th, 1995, the prosecution begins its opening statement. Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden make passionate opening statements. He killed her out of jealousy, Darden told the jury. He killed her because he couldn't have her. And that was the whole, motive of their case was, he was jealous. He didn't
Crime
want...
of passion.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. They were divorcing, separated. He had a girlfriend. We've all heard Paula Barbieri, whatever her
That's
name
right.
was.
I forgot about her. Oh, yeah.
He
That's
had a
right.
girlfriend.
Yep.
And
Buddy.
but she couldn't have a boyfriend or even have any kind of relationship with men, right? Like, this is the control. I mean, it was
Yeah,
a
he
horrific...
still had that hold on her, or
Yeah.
wanted to have that hold on her at least.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, it was just horrifically violent and,
Yeah.
you know, relationship.
That's right. I forgot about Paula Barbier. I remember her.
I remember that name now. Yeah.
So January 25th, the defense gives its opening statement. Johnny Cochran begins his opening statement on behalf of the defense. This case is about a rush to judgment, an obsession to win at any cost, he told the jury. So again, like, we don't even really... Let's be real. The defense doesn't really have... OJ doesn't really have an alibi other than at one point in time he was on a plane. They know that. They don't need... He doesn't even really need to have an alibi. They just need to be, like, disputing.
Yeah.
He's just waiting to see what the prosecution's going to say so they can poke holes in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So February 13th, 1995, Nicole Brown Simpson's sister, sister, Denise Brown, testifies. I think you all remember that, where she's crying. She said,
Yeah.
talking about the abuse that she witnessed. This was really the only domestic abuse evidence that was actually allowed into the trial, was her up there talking about witnessing things and things that were said to her.
Really, that was it, eh?
That was it. And
Whoa.
very, 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 very quickly...
Did they play phone calls though, or was that
the 911 calls?
Yeah.
But I mean,
That
like,
was-
there's like, you know, other people who witnessed it. They didn't have people up there and like all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was one. And very early on, like in Marcia Clark's book, they talk about, like, she realized right away, she's like, we can't use this as a motive. It's not going anywhere. And it got overshadowed anyway later on because of, like, you know, the racial stuff. So I mean, right off the top, they were kind of just blown up. Like,
what they thought was their like smoking gun, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
they just
Didn't
weren't.
pan out.
Yeah.
They just couldn't get the evidence in, and it.
yeah.
You know, like, having those diaries in there in her own words, like, oh my goodness. She had pictures that she had taken of herself, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because because we saw those photos, like they were on the cover
I
of
think those-
magazines or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
I
Like,
remember seeing
with
those
all the
pictures.
bruises on her face when she was really, like,
Yeah.
you know, beat up.
And
Yeah.
some of that stuff was in there, but again, like, you know, it's like, you know, you don't want to talk about the racial lines and stuff like that, but you got to remember, you have 8 women, most of them are black on this jury, and OJ Simpson, a black man, is the one accused of doing this. Again, whether you try really hard to take your, you know, personal biases out of it, it's human nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it happens, and you can't fault people for that necessarily, but I mean, there's just so many layers of stuff that...
Well, everyone looks at, you know, you can't color, you know, everyone has their own personal experiences in life.
Yeah, well,
and
exactly.
You can't take out the, you know, everyone grows up experiencing different things that it colors your view on things. And
Yeah.
we haven't really touched on it yet, but, you know,
That's-
everything going on in LA
That's
time,
coming
yeah.
up
was a
soon.
massive influence on this whole case, I think.
So really quickly, February 12th, this is just an interesting point. February 12th, 1995, the jurors take a field trip to OJ's Rockingham home and Nicole Simpson's house on South Bundy Drive, which was labeled the crime scene. Yes. In theory, yeah. Well, okay. So in theory, visiting the scene of the crime, Marcia Clark said she wanted to show them how small the space was, because they always refer to Ron Goldman and where he was found and the wounds on his body and what they suspect of happening, that he was basically in like a killing cage because it was such a tiny spot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
he's basically pushed up against the fence.
Yeah.
Like, he had nowhere to go. He was kind of cornered in like,
Right.
the front walkway where there's like
Yeah.
a gate there. He was basically like in a corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And OJ's a
He
big
got back
guy
into it
and
and-
Ron's a big guy, and, you know, like, and so yeah, she's like, we want them to see the the crime scene to show the dynamics of where Nicole was.
Yeah.
Like, that's normal, right? You want
Yeah.
the jury to see. It's hard to see in pictures.
Yeah.
But then the defense was like, well, we want him to go to OJ's house because there was blood drops there. And she's like, what? No, that's not the scene of the crime.
Yeah,
Why are we going there?
It makes no sense to go to OJ's house.
Yeah. If you want to say
But-
there was a blood drop here or there or whatever.
Yeah.
This is where the glove was. Like, you're not going to, there's stuff to see, I guess, but not.
But it's not the
It's
crime
just
scene.
where, no, it's just
Yeah.
where they found some evidence,
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
you know.
but Judge Ito says, no, we can go to Rockingham as well. So again, this was just fraught with like so much media circus. Again, it goes back to the media circus. They had footage of, the bus with the jurors driving along the freeway, the lawyers driving along the freeway.
All the helicopter cameras.
When they got out of the car. So they visited Bundy. It was uneventful. They saw the space, whatever. But again, you have to remember, this was 8 months later. So things had been trimmed. Things had been cleaned. Nobody had lived there.
Yeah.
It was different, right?
Yeah.
They go to Rockingham, OJ's place. Marcia Clark, who had been there the day of the crime because she met with the lawyer, so she had seen what the house looks like. She's like, we walk in, completely different house.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is something we watched a documentary with the OJ case, and I thought this was crazy that the defense could go in before the jurors showed up for the tour of OJ's place and dress the home.
Because it wasn't a crime scene. Like, it was free to live in and do what they wanted.
Yeah, they changed the way the place looked inside to suit their narrative of OJ being like, a good guy, a family guy, part of like, a big part of the black community, like
Yeah, they
all that
changed
stuff.
they said they changed all the pictures in their house. They took some artwork from Johnny Cochran's office.
They
and hung
had
it up
pictures of OJ with white people,
White businessmen.
and they got rid of those pictures.
Yeah, they put up pictures of him and his mom and his kids and
and there
black
was some
kids.
There was some sort of famous painting that
Norman
they took
Rockwell painting.
they took from Johnny Cochran's office and hung it up at the top of the stairs and stuff like that to just make it look
him
more.
with cats, like.
They're trying to like. Look,
Well,
They're trying to paint a different picture of OJ, that one that the jury would sympathize with more.
So here's the thing: is like Marcia Clark walks in. As soon as she walks in, she's like, "Damn,
Yeah.
damn." So she right on the spot. She's like, "I want a hearing." Right on the spot. Judge Ito's here. Get the court reporter. I want a hearing because this is basically bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Judge Ito's like, "No, we're not doing that."
Oh my God.
Because again, he probably walks in and he's probably like shit too, because he knows, right? Like, and at this point, he's so far gone. It's just like, what am I gonna do?
And this whole thing is out of control.
Not to mention, there's cameras. You can go on YouTube and watch the footage of them huddling in the backyard trying to have a motion.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that OJ, who is the suspect of a double murder, he has every right to be there as a defendant, but he's walking around of free will in his house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just more of a guided tour of his house.
No handcuffs, no nothing. Yeah.
Anything to do with the trial.
Well, he's charismatic. He's making comments to jurors, and he's like, the jurors like, "Can we see your trophy?" They showed him the friggin' trophy room.
Oh my God.
Like Marcia Clark, like read her book. It gives you so much stress because you can feel it.
Yeah.
Like the rage that just is going through your body.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was just a major cluster. That was a disaster.
Yeah.
It did nothing but make the jury like OJ more.
It just seems like all of the decisions that Ito has made has been tilted towards helping the defense.
Well, I think he was...
Maybe that's just me, like, not really knowing the full scope of the trial or following as closely as you have, but that's what it sounds like.
No, I mean, he was starstruck, point blank.
Yeah.
He was starstruck. Again, Johnny Cochran was a smooth operator.
Yeah. I get taking the jury to the scene of the crime to kind of paint a clear picture of everything. Going to OJ's house makes no sense to me. I can't see justification for that.
No, there's no sense.
No,
but
you're not going to go. You're going to go to every single place they found evidence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, it was just a mess. Like, can you imagine? Like, this is just, and we're only like a month into the trial. Not even like 3 weeks into the trial, and this happens. I mean, it was just so like tainted with so much like just crap so early on that the prosecution was definitely
they had their work cut out for him. Yeah, no, I mean, I get not whatever, but props to the defense because this is what he's paying $50,000 a day for.
That's true.
Right?
They did their job. You can't.
I can't fault them.
Yeah.
No.
Johnny Cochran and these guys because that's their job.
I mean,
show them this, paint the picture this way, make me look like that. Do whatever I got to do because I'm not going to,
slimy.
I didn't do this. I'm not going to jail. So
slimy or not, that's his job, and he did it well.
It's the game.
And I watched a documentary with Carl. What's his name? Carl Douglas. I can't remember. He was Johnny Cochran's like, basically like junior lawyer, but he ended up doing like questioning and stuff, and he was tough. But he in the interview, he's like, "Damn right, we went in that house and changed it."
Absolutely. Marcia Clark would have done the same thing.
Damn
if
right.
She could.
Yeah.
She would have gone in there and put up other photos. Like, it's all. It sucks because
it's a chess game.
It's a game. That's like for the prosecuting defense. It's whack-a-mole.
As much as the facts,
and it's like somewhere in that game, justice gets lost.
Yeah.
Well, for as much as the evidence and the facts are what you're supposed to focus on, again, we're all human. It doesn't always work that way.
Well, not even that, but like even the prosecution is only going to enter the evidence that they want to enter. They're not going to enter everything, right?
No, of course.
So even right there, like it's
Unfortunately.
It's a gamesmanship,
all
you're right.
bullshit.
Well,
Yeah.
and the judge is the referee, right?
Yeah.
So depending on whatever. And I mean, I'm not saying Judge Ito was a bad judge. I mean, he was where he was for a reason.
Yeah.
I think he just very much got, and there's a reason why when this trial was over, he disappeared.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He doesn't want to talk about it. He refuses to talk, because I think he probably sits back
Did
and
he
he's
write
like,
a book?
No, nothing. He hasn't talked about it. And
Oh, wow.
I
I
was
think
gonna
it's
say he just kind of.
I think it's because it's one of those things he probably reflected afterwards and was like, damn, I was in over my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I blew this.
I mean, and it wasn't just him, but I'm just saying there was so many components of why this just was an epic fail. Okay, so now we're going to get into sort of probably the biggest issue or whatever you want to call it around this trial. And it didn't even really start out this way. It just kind of morphed this way by one person, I think, kind of inadvertently, whatever it happened. Mark Furman, the detective.
Yes, this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone knows that name.
So just really quickly, March 13th, 1995, Mark Furman is cross-examined and denies being racist. He also objects to the defense theory that he undermined the investigation by tampering with evidence. So super, super quickly, Mark Furman had a past of giving racial slurs. He said he didn't do it. The prosecution believed and put him on the stand. So basically the whole defense was like, we're going to point this guy as being racist and he's the one that found this glove, but we think he planted it.
Well, and that's a key piece there. You kind of gloss, but he's the one that found that
Right.
glove.
Right.
Yep.
And we didn't really talk about that, but he found that glove without a warrant
Right.
when
He
he
hopped
hopped
over
the
the
fence.
fence.
Right.
So
Right.
there was some
A lot of sketchy shit happened.
Some strange
unusual
behavior.
circumstances.
Yeah.
So just to
Strange circumstances happen, but is not uncommon. Like they said,
Well, no,
police
'cause-
officers at the time, we thought that there was a crime in that house too.
well,
There
that's
was
the
blood
thing
leading
is that
to it,
we
right?
saw
Right.
a horrible murder scene. We're here to talk to them. There's blood obviously outside and
Right.
whatever.
So
We're going in and we don't have a warrant, but I'm going over the fence. He runs into Cato Kalin.
right. So
I heard
really,
noises, finds the glove.
right. So again, like I said, he had been accused of doing racial slurs. He said he swore on the stand that he didn't do it. He didn't say it, blah, blah, blah. The defense used that and was like, no, no. Anyway, long story short, a couple months go by. They call him back because the defense finds tapes, or the person who recorded the tapes gives them to the defense and says, look, Mark Furman said horrifically racist things, awful things, terrible things that, nobody needs to hear or nobody should ever have said. The prosecution finds out. They're like, well, damn, he just went on there and said, I didn't say these words. I've never said these words. And now...
And now we have proof
Here's you on tape.
you did.
saying
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
So that just killed all his credibility right there. Now they're, now
what that does?
now the defense is like...
That brings a shadow of doubt over all that evidence that Mark Furman just found,
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, and I think it goes like, so that kind of brings in the racial part of the case. I mean, some people could agree or disagree that it already was racial. And I think to a degree it was. I mean, it was a very racial time. I mean, I know you were talking about it,
Well,
but
that's
you
the
can kind
we,
of quickly.
No, that's we never even touched on. Like
Well,
this is like
yeah.
I don't know. Was it a year after the Rodney King riots?
Very
or-
close.
Like so, L.A. and the LAPD did not exactly have a great reputation
No.
with the black community at all.
No.
So this was, the Rodney King, all the officers being acquitted and stuff like that, and obviously that led to the riots.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of racial tension in this city,
Yes.
and now you have
A black defendant.
one of the, not just a black, but a celebrity black defendant that a lot
Yeah.
of people know and recognize now on trial for murder
Yeah.
with the LAPD involved.
Yeah,
so there was,
successful.
Looking
like,
for,
looked well upon in the community.
yeah. So that what's going to happen here? Is this going to be another Rodney King thing where
Yeah.
he's going to be buried by the LAPD and stuff like that, and then this Mark Furman stuff comes out, and to a lot of people it proves
Of course.
this is exactly what we've been saying about the LAPD.
This is the LAPD.
This is
we
the
know.
LAPD that we know.
Yeah.
A white guy who comes off as a nice, friendly guy who
Behind the
behind
scenes,
closed doors is racist,
and bigoted, and
yeah, would do anything to sink a black
Sink
black
OJ.
person and put them in jail.
yeah,
Yeah.
So it was just the timing of all this stuff. Like it's really with with OJ, the Rodney King riots that had just happened, the racial tension,
Yeah.
the cameras in the courts. Like it was just this whole trial was like a powder keg of
And-
everything.
And
yeah.
now,
Just waiting to go off.
and
Yeah.
now, like, again, the defense, whether the defense actually believed that Mark Furman planted it or whatever, who knows? But they had their in.
Well,
they were like, this is how we're winning that.
He lied on stand. It doesn't matter what he says
No.
now. The guy's
Yeah.
a liar. Racist, not racist. He's a liar.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what
all
I
that
mean.
matters.
Like as soon as that happened, the glove he found,
Yep.
the blood he found in
Yeah.
the vehicle and stuff, all that is like,
Yeah.
can we trust this guy that
Yeah.
actually found this like legit?
Yeah.
And on a
he-
deeper level, it's
Yeah.
not only Mark Furman, it's like, well, if he did it, then what about all the other cops that were there? They
Yeah.
were all in on it and could have done it too.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's like he just proved himself to be a liar. So
Yeah,
it was,
exactly.
It was not
basically
good.
everything that comes out of his mouth
Is gone.
is useless.
all of this
And I'm
evidence is
sure
ruined.
Well,
Marsha Clark and them were probably obviously
Oh,
knew
she
that
was
right away. It was
pissed.
like
Yeah.
shit.
So he comes back on the stand somewhere throughout the course of the trial. I think the defense calls him back at this point in time. Anyway, he gets up and he basically
I remember
pleads the
this.
fifth.
Yeah, pleads
Doesn't
the
say
fifth.
anything.
That's all he
pleads the
says.
fifth.
I plead the fifth.
Now,
Yeah.
in interviews later, like years and years, like I've watched interviews of him, like in the past couple years. I mean, he's like, look, he admits he said horrible. I'm not excusing what he did. I'm just saying what he is.
No,
he's spoken out about it.
his-
He's like,
His defense of the situation is
right. Like
yeah.
he doesn't deny he said it. He said it was horrible. Whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's still terrible. You
Because
said it.
he was talking to a screenwriter or something
Whatever.
for a movie. So
right. It doesn't matter. You
but-
still don't say that.
No,
shit.
no, exactly what I'm saying. He's
But so my point is that I lost my point in my train of thought. I was gonna say something that he said recently, but I was just saying.
either way.
like,
He has you can listen to his excuses, reasonings, whatever.
But that wasn't
Yeah.
the point of what I
Clear
was
about
saying.
what
It
he
was something
feels.
else. But yeah, anyway, I mean, oh no. So he said he went on, he did the whole pleads the fifth because because Marsha Clark's like, she said she's screaming in her head, like, no, like at the very least, like you get up there and you admit you said it. Like admit you said it
Take
because
ownership.
then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, now he's like, look, my lawyer was like, you can't say you said it because then, again, your jaw, like you're admitting
You'll
it.
go to jail.
Yeah.
You just lied on the stand, man. You
Perjury.
broke you
Yeah.
just broke the law.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So anyway, it was like Mark Furman definitely like the racial tensions and the racial was always there even from the beginning because again OJ's black, so it was always there. The Rodney King had just happened. It was always underlining.
there was always that
and
simmering.
this just like
It just
yeah,
that sort of that itch in the back of a lot of people's mind of like
it itched it.
just
It proved
really
it.
proved it's like there we
There-
go.
there it is.
This
Yeah.
is exactly what we were waiting for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The LAPD,
Now-
the racism.
It's all here at the
all
forefront
here,
now.
yeah.
It's up to everybody's own determination based on evidence and things they've seen, whether they think that Mark Furman actually planted things
Well,
and did all that
that's-
stuff. I mean, Mark Furman, he showed his true, he said horrifically racist things, awful. I think at one time whatever. It was awful. But I mean, do I think he planted the evidence? I really don't think he did. Because they didn't even know who the suspect was at that time.
I don't think he
No.
planted the evidence. For the timing of them to do it, like it.
Well, they didn't even know the suspect at the
That's
time.
what I'm
I think
saying.
that's the
It
biggest
just doesn't
piece.
make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he
Doesn't
obviously
matter.
he came out that he lied on the stand. He said racist things, so
He spoiled it all.
But even in the back of my head,
All
the
that stuff
tiny,
has just tainted all that evidence.
the tiny
Yeah.
little piece of my head, like, but he could have, based on his history,
Well,
right? So it's like I know where the
Yeah.
jurors were coming from.
No, and that's exactly because, and again, that's why Marsha Clark and them wanted to have a white jury because
Yeah.
a black jury, whether themselves, their family, their friends, their people in their
Have
neighborhood,
experienced
have
it.
experienced and stuff. So it's like
Yeah.
this is exactly what we've seen in the past when
Yeah.
when the LAPD comes in.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
All of a sudden, marijuana shows up in somebody's pocket, or
Yep.
They're planted
there's
evidence.
a gun that
it's
wasn't
that.
there. So
Yeah.
it's like we've seen this shit before, and
Yeah.
here it is now on the
Yeah.
stand. Because there's cameras in here, there's no hiding it.
Yep.
This is what
There you go.
this is what the LAPD is this.
Yep.
So
So
it just proved their point, and it
yeah. So
ruined everything that he had found done in this case.
Mark Furman was clearly a major player in this trial.
Yeah.
But then there was another thing that came up. So one of the prosecution's biggest evidence was DNA evidence. Like they had his blood everywhere.
Yeah.
It was everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
know. Like you
At the
listen to it, it's
scene,
like
everywhere.
Yeah.
right?
But that's where it becomes tainted because who
Of course.
found the blood, right?
Yeah.
Of course. I
Yeah.
mean,
Versus
and
LA
there's
cops.
there's a whole bunch of things that went wrong with the blood, but one of the biggest things is that the criminologist Dennis Fung admits that he worked for the prosecution, like the criminalist for the county. He admits that proper protocols weren't entirely enforced at the scene of the crime. And again, going back to the fact that every single thing was on camera, they played it at the court. The defense was like, dude, what are you doing here? I mean, they have video of him, the criminalist, improperly collecting.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's the thing. It's like you just had.
And there's human error. I'm not saying he was a shitty criminologist.
No,
there's
but that's
human
what I'm saying.
error.
You're under a microscope. There's
Yeah.
cameras everywhere. Any little.
Yeah.
If you don't go, crossing those T's, dotting
This
those
is
I's.
a big case. Go by the book.
Yeah.
I mean, like you should anyways. You should
Right,
always go with the
right,
book.
right.
Yeah,
But
it's like, and that's all the defense has to do is prove reasonable doubt.
yeah,
Well,
that's
and-
So
it.
if you can prove, hey, that guy wasn't wearing, and that was one of the
Right.
clips we saw, he wasn't wearing
a
gloves
glove.
and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, now it's tainted.
One of the biggest things, like again, and it's just that, well, in hindsight, right? The cops show up, they find the bodies. The bodies are visible on the street. It's nighttime, but and it's horrific crime scene. Like
Yeah.
we've all
Yeah.
read details about it. It's horrific. One of the police officers or the detectives thinking, I want to preserve some sort of modesty over these victims. I don't want people to see it.
Yeah.
Goes inside, grabs a blanket from her couch and puts it over top of her body.
and that,
In the
like-
moment, thinking,
Yeah.
I just want to whatever.
He's thinking he's doing a good thing. He's like, I'm respecting the dead here.
But think
Yeah,
about
I'm
it.
covering them up.
Think about it.
But-
now the defense immediately has a reason why OJ's hair might be on her body.
Oh, exactly.
yeah, exactly. It's like
the blanket.
I've been in that house 1,000
Yeah.
I have
times.
kids there, everything.
What a like,
Right?
but just I understand the thought, but like you think like as really like
As
are
a-
you
Now,
fucking,
but
daft,
are you
like-
a fucking idiot?
But
Yeah.
here's the
You-
thing.
like what the hell you weren't thinking.
Here's the
No.
thing. You have to remember that this stuff, again, you have to factor in human error and all this stuff. This stuff probably happens in every single criminal investigation. The difference is there isn't cameras watching
No,
everything
and-
24/7.
but
Yeah.
That's also really fucking scary.
Of course
because
it
it's
is.
Like, I don't
Of
have
course.
$50,000 a day to
Yeah.
pay for it. So God,
Of course.
Exactly. How many like other crime scenes are getting tainted because of improper evidence
Yeah.
collection?
Of course.
that
A lot.
You don't have the cameras or the time or the money to.
Yeah.
So,
like,
one of
so-
OJ's lawyers literally, like, their job wasn't one of the lawyers, probably one of the students or
Yeah.
assistants. Their job was to literally watch all the footage of the criminalist collecting.
Yeah, look for
and
any.
and sure enough, out of like hours and hours of tape, there was a 5-second thing where it was blurry, it was far away. He picked something up without a glove.
Oh my
And
god.
that's all they needed, though. That's all they needed.
That's it. Yeah.
Reasonable doubt. That's all you
That's
get.
all I gotta
You don't
prove.
have to prove he's in
Yeah.
it. It's just
No.
there's a reasonable
But-
doubt that some of this
Yeah.
stuff is weird. Now you got the Mark Furman stuff all tainted.
Exactly.
Now you've got
Here's-
a criminologist doing some shady stuff.
Here's a
You've got
really-
the, blankets being put on bodies.
I know,
Here's
this is crazy.
Here's a really interesting fact before we wrap up this is that Dennis Fung, so again, he was hammered by the defense on the stand. Like he was, even Judge Ito was like, this is a little, even Marsha Clark was like, wow, this is
Yeah.
like hammered by
Yeah.
the defense attorneys,
Yeah.
just called like incompetent, useless. And Dennis Fung's a very like meek mannered kind of guy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
After like weeks of testimony being hammered by the defense, he gets off the stand. He's done his testimony.
His name has just been dragged through the mud.
Dragged
and,
through the
like,
mud,
literally
called his reputation, everything. He
Ruined.
gets up,
publicly flogged.
he walks by the defense table, and Johnny Cochran stands up, goes over to him, gives him a big old handshake, a side hug, and is like, "Good job, thank you."
What the heck?
But wait,
Yeah.
Dennis Fung's like,
Smiling.
"But it works. The charisma. The Johnny Cochran knows what he's
Does
doing."
does Dennis Fung not know what just happened? Like you just
is
got flogged, pal.
Probably
Like,
you
a
just
fever
got-
dream. But again, you're up there and
He's
you're
probably just happy to
starstruck.
be out of it. Not even
Yeah.
that. 'Cause I think,
Well, yeah.
thank
this
God
is over, thank God.
But I'm just saying that's how it went with a lot of witnesses. They would be killed by the defense, and then the defense would stand up and invite you to drinks.
Yeah.
later.
They were eating shit with a smile on their face.
Of course, but
What
it
the heck?
worked. It worked, and I
Yeah.
mean, I can't.
Well, you can, but you watch the clips and Johnny Cochran and those guys. Yeah, they had, like you listen to him talking to the jury and stuff versus Marsha Clark. Like it's two totally different.
Oh yeah,
deliveries.
he had the passion.
Yeah.
Well, and then we
He had
can
some
eat.
passion and fire and some feeling. Where Marsha Clark was very like
Dry.
The problem
by the
was
book. Like,
Yeah.
Marsha Clark was not received well by the women jurors because
Well,
they thought she was like whatever. But
yeah.
really quickly, because we were kind of talking about, I mean, again, there's so much to talk about. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep it moving. But one of the interesting points about Johnny Cochran and the whole defense team, but specifically Johnny Cochran, was as the trial went on, there was a whole phase where they started, he even says, or Carl Douglas said they started wearing, I don't know exactly what it was, but like the ties were the colors of like black community groups and black communities and religious groups. And
yeah.
because he's talking to black jurors who knows. So it's like, hey,
We're just
we're in it together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. We're
We're on the same
Yeah.
team
yeah,
here.
we're on the same
Yeah.
team here. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, it was just the racial stuff's horrible, but did the defense use it to their advantage? 100%.
Of course,
Oh,
yeah.
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even if they believed it or not, which
If
I don't
if you're
think.
the defense, you're going to find any edge you can.
I don't
right?
think they
Yeah.
actually believe Mark Furman planted it. But hey,
Again, it doesn't
did.
matter what him planting it. He lied on the stand, so he gave them a huge gift.
so I'm not going to talk about the DNA evidence because we all know it was tons, but I'm just going to say this one thing. In May 10th, 95, the DNA testimony begins. Jurors learned one day later that one in 170 million people, including Simpson, would have the genetic characteristics as a drop of blood that was discovered at the crime scene.
Yeah.
So it pretty much pinpoints, hey, this is OJ's blood.
Well, I think part of the problem,
Yeah.
too, remember, is, like, back then, DNA was still relatively
It was
new.
super
new.
I don't think, like, they had to explain it to,
'Cause
over days or weeks, like,
Yeah.
what DNA is and stuff like
'Cause
that.
I think it's classified as circumstantial evidence still, DNA back then. It wasn't actually like...
Oh, it might have been, yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. But
There was a whole new, there's a whole like articles about it. It's called EDT DNA. It was a new way of doing DNA.
Yeah.
And it was new. And Marcia Clark was an expert on it. So, well, not an expert, but she had like knew a lot about
Yeah.
it. And it was one of the first trials where this EDT stuff was coming out.
Yeah.
So it was basically just more pinpointing, being like, no, like we can drill it in even further and be like, this is.
whereas I
Yeah.
think nowadays, I would think, like, if I was in a jury and they're like, their DNA matched this, okay. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think I would.
That puts you at the scene, basically.
I
yeah.
wouldn't, to get a deep dive into
Yeah.
the DNA structure and the chromosomes.
Wouldn't
it's
need that.
I don't think I need that as much, but I
Yeah.
understand enough what DNA is and how rare
Yeah,
it is that if you said it's
exactly.
one in
Look.
170 million versus it's one in like 10.
But
Yeah.
but you have
okay,
to.
that's that's a
So you have to remember this. So like basically they're like, no, like there's no other option. It was OJ Simpson there, which the defense doesn't even care at this point because they're like, that's cool, but we have a cop that's racist. So
That's
we
what I
just
mean.
assume
Yeah.
it doesn't matter now.
That's
No.
like I'm saying. All the evidence doesn't matter because it's tainted
Yeah.
by Mark Furman and his racist comments.
All Johnny
And,
Cochran has to say is Mark Furman was there.
Exactly.
But plus you've got the criminologist there.
Yeah.
You just have Dennis Fung or whatever. It's
Tainting
like,
it.
well, maybe he screwed up. We
Yeah,
saw
you've
Yeah.
got these bumbling cops that can't collect evidence
yeah, it's
correctly.
like the Keystone Cops over here. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
All right, so I got to keep it moving or else we're going to be here forever and everybody's probably bored by now. But this is probably the biggest moment. I mean, aside from the
Yeah,
Mark Furman, this was whatever you want
This
to
is
call it.
I think they're going for the.
So on June, and I just want to give a really quick background because I think people find it interesting and not a lot of people know, but then we can talk about it. So on June 15, 1995, OJ Simpson tries on the leather gloves, the ones that were found at the scene that were used to commit the crime. Here's
Yes.
how it went down super quickly because a lot of people don't know this. Christopher Darden wanted him to try the gloves on. Marcia Clark was like, hell to the no. You do not put something in defendant's hands that we have no control of or we don't know the answer to. We don't know if they're going to fit him.
Exactly.
We're not going to put it up to chance.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. The day that it was going to happen, so Christopher, because she was lead counsel, Christopher Darden was like, oh, fine, whatever. They kept arguing. The defense team obviously knew that this was a thing. The day that it was potentially going to happen or not happen, I don't know the words exactly, so I'm not verbatim, but F. Lee Bailey went up to Christopher Darden. Christopher Darden was a hothead. Everybody knew it.
Mm-hmm.
He worked on emotion. He was reactionary. F. Lee Bailey was like, dude, are you going to put the gloves on him? Like, just to let you know, if you're not going to put them on, we're going to put them on him.
Yeah, give them bait them.
Christopher Darden was like, hell to the no, we're going to beat you to it.
Yeah.
He goes to Marcia Clark doesn't even know what's happening. This is while court's in session.
Oh my God.
Sits down, stands up. Christopher Darden's like, yeah, we want the defenders trying the gloves. And if you watch those clips, you can see Marcia Clark
The silent,
seething.
which is just because again,
She doesn't know this just happened.
Well, they always say a lawyer will never ask a question they don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why
That-
would you, right?
that's-
So
Yeah.
Don't do that.
we all
No.
know how that went. We all have our theories about why it went the way it did. Yada yada yada. He stands up. He puts the gloves on. He puts on a whole little like.
They would never fit them. They were soaked full of blood
course
and
they
God
weren't
knows
gonna
what
fit 'em.
else, and they're leather gloves.
And you
and
can be
And
damn
he's wearing
sure.
like a
he's
latex
wearing
glove
latex
underneath.
gloves on
But
top.
wait about this though. The $50,000 he's spending a day, you can be damn sure that those lawyers made use of that money when they sat him down and they said, no matter what, those gloves do not fit you.
Yeah.
Well, it would be the same thing if someone said to me, "Hey, like this hat if this hat fits your
You're
head,
going to
you're
jail
going to
for
jail
life.
for life. Goddamn right. I'd be like, all right, I know
Yeah.
it doesn't fit. How do I put this on? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like obviously, like I can't even get over like top of my head,
Yeah,
whatever,
like,
right? Like
you're gonna
make sure it doesn't work.
yeah.
So-
and he was an actor.
Not
Or a bad actor. I don't know, but like,
So
Yeah,
I mean,
you know.
you didn't even have to be an actor. I mean, you just
But it was-
he knew he was going to be trying them on because it was their strategy, right? They baited the prosecution. Christopher Darden fell for it. Philippe Bailey in interviews was like, I knew he was going to fall for it. He's a hothead.
well, in one of the documentaries we were watching, there was one of OJ's friends or lawyers that made a comment about maybe he stopped taking his arthritis pills for a little bit, which can also sometimes make joints
make it
Which he
swell.
did. They just didn't say. They're like, if he was going to stop
No, like
taking
if
it.
he might have stopped taking it a couple
Yeah.
weeks
They
ago.
did. They knew they were setting
Yeah,
this up.
his hands are gonna swell up.
Yeah.
His joints.
anything
Yeah.
To,
So right there, I mean, yeah.
he
I mean,
basically at that point, on top of everything else, it's like the case is over.
the prosecution had zero chance.
Now, whatever
Oh, yeah.
shred of hope the prosecution had is
And they knew it.
gone.
She knew it.
Exactly. And like if you look at the way you're trying on the glove, his fingers were spread wide.
Of
And like
course.
it was a bad acting job. Like from my
But it didn't
my
matter.
perspective.
Didn't have to be good. Just
No.
had to not fit.
Just
Yeah.
as long as because if he slide right on,
Yeah.
Oops.
It is mine. Whoops. Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
it's crazy.
That was
Yeah.
just, I mean, I thought
stupidity,
that,
just pure stupidity.
well, it was reactionary and an emotional
Yeah, it's stupid.
response. And
Yeah.
I never knew that little detail. And I read it in one of the books. And then I saw an interview where Philippe Bailey's like, yeah,
Yeah, again,
Got him, yeah.
OJ's paying these guys good money for.
slimy or
Shit like
not,
that.
it
It's
It's
worked.
not slimy. That
Well, I'm just-
Christopher Darden's a moron.
Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
but that's what I'm
Like,
saying.
yeah.
Like,
Like
whatever.
just
So
crazy.
that happened. And then August 29th, we were talking about Mark Furman, and now it's actual date. August 29th was when the tapes were released of Mark Furman saying the racial slurs. The jury hears the old tape recordings stating multiple racial slurs and also bragging about his enforcement of police brutality. This contradicts the detective's earlier testimony during cross-examination. So yeah, not only was he saying horrifically racial slurs,
Yeah.
he was talking about horrific, like
Police brutality.
Yeah.
yeah.
Again, he's
He
being
sunk the
exposed
case.
for what everything.
Yeah.
This case was
most of
over
these people in LA thought about that.
As soon as
as soon as Mark Furman got caught. This case
Yeah.
was over.
100%.
You sunk them, and then
Yeah.
all this other
Okay.
stuff is just bearing them further and further.
So September 28th, 1995, the defense presents its closing argument. Following the prosecution's arguments the day before, Cochran delivers his closing argument to the jury with the famous phrase, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." Now, Steve, you were telling us quickly about how you watched something where they're talking about where they came up with that.
they were like in one of the they were having one of their sessions like outside of court, and they were talking about the gloves and stuff like that, and somebody just kind of randomly said that if the
Yeah.
glove doesn't fit, you must acquit, and they were like, "That's good, we could and then so that's perfect.
But I mean, it's not wrong.
No, and it's a nice little
Yeah.
and it sums it up perfectly because
Yeah.
it's the defense, the prosecution, the cop, everyone is saying that those are the gloves of the murderer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they don't fit
didn't
OJ.
fit him, so
Yeah.
he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
Now there was lots of evidence on the gloves, like they had the people who worked at the store, and like there was like only a certain amount made, and blah
No,
blah
no,
blah 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 blah. But it
doesn't
didn't matter
because it's
They
like
didn't
those
fit.
gloves were worn by
Yeah.
the murderer,
Yeah.
and they didn't fit him. So obviously it couldn't.
Couldn't be
again,
OJ.
it's just you gotta
Yeah.
it's just a just you got to prove doubt. That's
Yeah.
it. You
Yeah.
don't have to prove its innocence. Just
So
Reasonable doubt.
yeah, exactly.
then on October 3rd, 1995, at 10 a.m., after just 4 hours of deliberation, 4 hours in an 8, 9, 10-month-long trial,
That's crazy.
the jury found OJ not guilty on both murder counts. News of the verdict had a disruptive effect in the United States and abroad, as an estimated 100 million people worldwide watched or listened to the verdict announcement.
That's crazy.
Before the verdict was read, President Clinton was briefed on potential security measures in case rioting occurred following the announcement, which was a huge
I
concern.
think
yeah.
that was
After Rodney King, for sure. Like,
and given everything that was said in this
Yeah.
trial and heard,
Yeah.
it was a
was
legit
huge.
concern.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure. Like
Okay, so we've kind of done the overview brief synopsis, and I kind of wanted to, give you guys a few little questions to sort of like, because we haven't really given our own opinion on this, right?
No,
It's a
no.
very
Yeah.
polarizing topic, and everybody has different opinions. But Steve, I'll start with you. So first
On
of
the hot
all,
seat.
I know, right? It's scary. So first of all, I'm going to ask, do you think, despite what the verdict is, do you think he was guilty or not guilty? And if you think that he was guilty, do you think that the not guilty verdict was correct based on the evidence and by the law? Was that verdict correct? Did the jurors do the correct thing?
So for I'm going to say yes, the jurors did it right. Based on the trial and stuff like that, yeah, I 100% can see that there was a ton of doubt cast on basically every facet of the investigation and all that stuff. I definitely think the jury got it right, but I also think OJ did it. The amount of I can't imagine them planting that evidence as fast as they did. Just it doesn't make any sense. Like it was too fast. If it had been a couple days later they found it and all this stuff, then maybe it'd be like, okay. But the fact that they found it right away, I know it was a little strange where he hopped
We're talking
the
like
fence
hours. Like it wasn't.
Well, it was hours, and like unless for some reason OJ Simpson was on somebody's radar to like somehow take down, like it just doesn't make sense. They would be like, yes, we're gonna take this and plant this, and
yeah.
Unless there was some sort of giant conspiracy, which seems completely unlikely to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any logical sense to me. So I definitely think, based on the evidence, like the blood was everywhere. It's a crime of passion. There was like his hat was there, the footprints, all this stuff. Like it was a horrible, horrible, messy crime scene that was definitely not planned. There's no criminal mastermind. This was someone that lost their shit.
Sorry, just what you just mentioned that.
Yeah.
What do you think, just because again, there's a lot of theories and nobody really knows, but what do you think actually happened?
Me personally, so I know it was his daughter's recital. The whole family, the Brown family went for dinner. OJ was specifically told, you can't come. I think he got his nose out of joint, and based on his past history, he was steaming over it. I think he went to confront Nicole, and I think maybe things got out of hand at the front gate between the two of them. I think Ron Goldman, that just a horrible place, I think he walked in on it, and I think he walked in on it, probably didn't realize what was kind of happening, and all of a sudden was like, holy shit. Like, and then I think before he even had a chance to really realize what was going on, he was already being stabbed. And he just the way it was, he got backed into that corner, didn't have a chance to do anything. Your probably mind's in sort of fight or flight, like what the fuck is happening right now? And
the evidence did say that he didn't have a lot of defensive wounds, which means he didn't have a lot of time to struggle.
No, I think he walked up there, he's going to see Nicole. He's got his glasses, and it was all right in front of him, so he might have even seen OJ with his back to him and Nicole there, and kind of not realizing what he was walking in on. And so I think he just walked in at the wrong time, and I think OJ pounced on it before he had a chance to react at all. And the way they said, he kind of got caught in that weird little spot where he couldn't really do anything. And sometimes your mind sees something, or you see something it takes you a minute to realize what's going on.
Yep.
That I think he just got it. He had no clue what was going on and just got attacked. And
okay. Eric, same questions for you.
I'm gonna agree with pretty much everything Steve said.
Okay.
But the first question was, did I think he did it right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I do think OJ did it. I think what Steve was saying, I do totally agree with. It was a crime of passion, and based on OJ's domestic violence past, and hearing how furious and insane he was, like on some of those the phone calls, I'm like, this guy, he is got a real violent side to him, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like based on his relationship with Nicole and how obsessive he was over her, that you could see him taking that next step and committing a vicious crime like this. So I'm gonna say, I do think OJ did it. And I don't sound like a broken record, but I think Steve got it right too with.
But sorry, before you get into that though, do you think the jury did the right?
That's
verdict?
exactly where I was going next.
Oh,
I think they did say it right, because the way the court system works and how jury trials work, from my understanding, is reasonable doubt. Right? You just have to prove reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
And the defense did that based on the racial evidence they found with Mark Furman. They planted a seed of doubt about the evidence itself. Like, you can't trust any of this evidence we're showing you, right? So DNA match doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Glove fitting or not doesn't matter. It's the blood doesn't matter. It's all tainted now because of Mark Furman and him being racist, right? So that totally tainted. So I think the jury got it right. And that's kind of my feelings of that. Like a lot of what Steve said, basically.
And then the same sort of how you think it happened.
Yeah. So I don't want to it does seem kind of weird that like
It's hard to speculate, but
it's hard to speculate. But
I think it's natural.
yeah, exactly. It's probably natural to speculate. Like maybe Ron Goldman and Nicole did have a relationship. Doesn't make what happened right at all. But maybe like like returning glasses to someone's house seems a little extra for like wait staff. So maybe they did know something. Maybe OJ did know of this guy.
Well, apparently they were friends. Like they were friends. They didn't just know each other as a waiter and a customer.
And I'm not justifying what happened.
No,
I'm just saying maybe there was like a relationship there. So
yeah, of course.
OJ like flipped out. I think Steve was right. Like OJ wasn't allowed to go to the dinner. So he was hanging out there waiting to confront Nicole. They show up. Ron Goldman shows up. OJ's like, I know this guy from whatever. He's like, there's something going on here and I don't like it. And he just lost his mind and killed them both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he just a full-on like rage.
Yeah, and looking at like the buildings themselves, like the condo complex she lived in, it was pretty dense living space, right? Like I don't know how nobody else heard this. There's no other witnesses like peeked out the window like, what the hell's going on out there?
Not to mention the kid, but you know what? Well, the kids, but I think it happened so fast.
Yeah, and the kids didn't wake up. You're right. Like
the one thing I kind of wonder is because the way they sort of explained it, at least their theory is that.
Yeah.
I wonder if he cold cocked her, knocked her right out.
I haven't gotten to my theory yet.
And then after,
sorry.
Okay.
Can I answer my own question?
I think you just stepped on Kelly's toes, or you might be saying what she thinks.
But that's what I think. Like I think because again, you have to think of the whole thing, and I don't know the exact minutes and times off the top of my head, but the time for this to have happened, because I do believe he did it, the time for him to have been able to commit this was a pretty small window of time. That's why it was so rushed. I think that. She came out, he was there, he started confronting her. I don't know if she argued back or maybe he went right up, she walked down but I think he knocked her out. I think he hit her. She had contusions on her head.
Yeah.
He hit her, knocked her out. Whether in between that time Ron Goldman showed up when that happened and then he did what he did to Ron Goldman and he went back. Let's be real. The injuries to Nicole were severe. And I'm going to be a little bit graphic here just because, it's the facts. It is what it is. So be warned. But basically the way she was found was in the fetal position with her back up. She was almost decapitated. So I think she was cold cocked. They fought, whatever. She got knocked down. And then after he was done doing to Ron, he went back to her and he literally from behind grabbed her hair. Well, that's what they're saying. Slit her throat from end to end, almost decapitating her, and then dropped her head down.
Yeah. Oh my god.
No, I think
that's what
seemed to be. They said they seem to think that
whether she was already had died before then or not. That is like because they always say like all the things were like crimes of passion. Like it's just horrific.
Well, they say like you can almost see the anger and
because it was just like
in the crime. Yeah.
It wasn't like one stab wound. It was like you had the choice to stop after one, but you didn't. You went back and almost decapitated both of them.
Yeah,
it was
like that's anger. That's just blacking out.
Yeah.
And I do believe he blacked out.
Blackout rage.
An interesting thing is like after his death. A whole bunch of scientists were like, hey, can we examine his brain? He's a football player. Those injuries
CTE.
Right?
Yeah.
So they wanted to examine it and the family said no. And I do have to believe, I mean, it's impossible not to. And again, not an excuse, but there was something.
Knowing what we
to have the rage anger.
But to hear, sadly, it's, you're hearing more and more about this stuff now. And you're seeing some of these wrestlers, like
Chris Benoit,
these horrible
crimes,
stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're coming back, and
it's a
up
shame.
here, like we're obviously hockey, but like a lot of these hockey enforcers sadly taking their own lives and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they're starting to realize how much of a
problem.
To me, I think it's a shame, and I understand. I think it's a shame that let's be real. I know why the family didn't want to because they don't want it. Their dad's whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's a shame that they didn't because I think it would have been very interesting.
It might have shed some light on some things potentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what I think. I think the jury 100% gave the right verdict. It's not the verdict we wanted. But 100%, based on you just can't argue. Based on the evidence, the defense did what they needed to do. They got him off. It was worth that $50,000 a day.
No, the dream team they're delivered. Yeah.
But let's really quickly, he got his karma, 10 years later, going back to jail.
Well, he lost the civil trial.
Well, not that, but he went back to jail for 10 years for the kidnapping.
Armed robbery, trying to get his trophies back.
Dude, let's just be frank. You just got off of a double murder.
Oh my god.
Really?
Yeah. You think you'd be
but that's a story.
using your turn signals and dotting your T's, crossing
that's
your eyes
a story for another day.
Not so much.
But also, I just had another question. This is kind of interesting because I think we all You have to pick one. Just because I'm curious in your mind, what is the one thing that stands out the most? You have to pick one thing that made that cinched the prosecution losing. If you were the jury, what would be that one thing where you're like, yep, nope, that's it? One thing. I know there's a million, but you have to pick the top one.
The top one, I think I'll go with the gloves. Not fitting. I think that, yeah.
Because you're visually seeing, yeah.
You're saying these are the murderer's gloves.
So if you were the jury watching that would have been like, yeah.
Well, everyone's saying that those are his gloves. Those are the gloves of the killer.
Yeah.
And they don't fit him.
What about you?
Easy. Mark Furman racial slurs on tape.
Yeah.
As soon as that came out on tape and that proves him lying on the stand, all the evidence is tainted.
Yeah.
None of it matters. Gloves, who cares?
I agree. Tainted. I mean, I think the Mark Furman thing was huge, but I think for me, I'm visual. It's the gloves too. The gloves. Even if you're like, no, I know they're your gloves. It's like, no, they don't fit. Like you'd see that and be like, how am I going to dispute that? How can I dispute that? You can't. It's black and white.
Yeah. I often wondered, like, could they have gotten the same gloves, like bought a new pair?
They tried.
And like been like, these are the exact same gloves, but not
soaked in blood.
Yeah.
So
if they could have done that or
something.
something.
No, they did try. There was a whole thing. Again, read Marcia Clark's book. If you're any interested in this case, read her book. It's a very good book. But they did try doing stuff like that. I can't remember why it didn't happen.
Well, maybe they couldn't. I don't.
Whatever. They couldn't get it fast enough or yada, yada, yada. But they did. That was one of their things.
Okay, because I was like, maybe you could find the same pair.
But let's be real. He's still not going to make him fit.
Well,
no.
Yeah, but it might have been a little.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyways, but to me, the everything, like, it all adds up. But it was, to me, the big thing was, like, these are the gloves of the person that killed them. And they don't fit. Then okay, then it's got to be somebody else.
I think it's just fast. Like, I admittedly, out of the three of us, like, I am like the definite.
No, you're
history nerd about this.
No, you're definitely you're the true crime buff out of the three
Well,
of
and
us.
the OJ Simpson just fascinates me. And in full, like, honesty, like, it's part of the reason why I ended up going to school for some, like, legal stuff, because
you've always been, like, big into that trial.
Fascinated me. And, like, I have rewatched, like, all 8 months. Well, you can go on YouTube and rewatch it.
I think it's all on YouTube or something.
Right? I've rewatched it numerous times, and I just analyzing it, and after reading, like, it just fascinates me just how insane. Every book I can read, I read. It's just crazy to me. It's interesting and it's fascinating. And I mean, again, I think one of the biggest things, like, it's hard to remember sometimes when it's all this stuff going on, but I mean, 2 people were, like, brutally murdered.
Well, then that's
brutally murdered.
That definitely seemed to get lost in all the surface of it, was that the reason here is 2 people lost their lives in a horrible
Not
fashion.
Only that getting lost in the surface, I mean, again, no shade to Nicole Brown and her family, but, like, Ron Goldman, he was basically just the guy that was found with Nicole.
Yeah. Him especially got,
other than his dad and
his dad, and props
advocating
to them,
for him.
Really they fought for Ron for his name to be remembered, and even with the civil trial and stuff like that, like, that's
why they fight so hard. They're like, we know we're never going to see money from him, but it's just all about keeping his name in people's heads.
And that's just like, hey, like, their family suffered a horrible tragedy that they're never going to recover from. Nothing's ever going to make it
right,
fix it or make it right. But we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that he's not forgotten. He didn't die in vain. It was not for nothing. So
So I mean, like I said, there's so many deep dives we can do into this, but we wanted to just kind of do, like, the overview and sort of
it's crazy to
looking back 30 years later.
That's nuts, man.
30 years. I mean, like I said, I remember when that hit the news, and from the get-go,
man, it was so bizarre too, because, like I said, obviously, if you were a football fan, you knew OJ, but, like, I remember,
I didn't know who OJ was.
I knew he was a football player, but I remember more for, like, the Naked Gun and stuff like that.
Like
Nordberg.
Well, he played football before you guys really watched it. So.
Before we were born.
He was retired when we were. But so I knew who he was and stuff like that. But so to thinking of the Nordberg, silly funny guy to.
This
was, you just don't know, right?
Yeah.
No, and it just, the fact that it was, like, a celebrity on trial like that, like, it was just, like, again, it was just sort of this perfect storm of everything kind of hitting together to make it this massive trial of the century, and it really was.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is that he obviously, there was two young kids that at the time were very young, 6 and 8 or 6 and 9, that this happened, and their life was in upheaval after the whole trial, and he was not guilty. He got custody of the kids back, and even up until, which it's just amazing to me. I mean, it is their dad, but even up until his death, like, he was still very close with the 2 young kids. I mean, and it was their mother.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just crazy. Like, you don't, I mean, I guess maybe they were so young, they weren't tainted by anything. It was just their dad. I don't know. But as they got older and like reading stuff, like, ooh, that's weird. I don't know.
He was found not guilty. I don't know. Yeah. So who knows?
I know. It's crazy.
Maybe they just chose to believe the verdict, like, that's it.
Yeah. Who knows? Like you said, it is their father. Evidence? You've lost their mother and stuff.
I mean, it's just,
who knows?
It's all just things like you speculate on. But anyway,
that's a whole other,
there's just so much to talk about. But anyway, I mean, I think it's interesting to hear. I mean, I think we're all kind of on the same page of what we think happened and the verdict and the guilt and innocence and yada, yada, yada. But I mean, people are going to be talking about this for like decades.
Oh yeah, no. Like I said, and someone made the point. Like I think they're right. Like this is probably the biggest celebrity trial since like the Lindbergh baby, which was like what, in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that.
So I don't know if we'll ever see anything like it again. To be
I
honest.
don't know. I mean, hopefully not, because hopefully nobody has to sacrifice.
No. But I just think now with the way everything is, I don't think anything would.
Well, because it wouldn't
be this big.
No, because now we're like, back then, like having all that televised wasn't a thing. Now it's a thing. Now you can't even like go to the bathroom in a public place without being on camera.
Well, not that, but like you can go on TMZ has all these videos of celebrities doing sometimes crazy things and stuff like that.
So it wouldn't be anything salacious and oh my god.
No, the veil of celebrity has been lifted a lot of ways in social media and stuff like that, so that you see. They are just regular people and do dumb things sometimes too.
Yeah, but before we wrap it up, like we said, we just want to kind of bring it back to the important part of this whole entire thing, that 2 people brutally lost their lives way too soon, and
no one was ever brought to justice for their crimes.
Nobody was brought to justice for their crimes.
It's still an unsolved case. Yeah.
And their families are all doing wonderful things to keep their memories and foundations and all that stuff. So I mean, it's tough.
Anyone out there that's listening, if you or anyone you know is suffering from any domestic abuse or any violence, we're going to put some links below to reach out and help. And don't ever be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we're going to wrap it up here. We've not dragged out, but I've talked way longer than I thought. Sorry guys, this is a long one.
Yeah,
that was good.
But comment below and just let us know what you thought, and if you want us to dive into any other aspects of this crazy case, I mean, I'm more than happy to do it.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, comment below. But that's it for today's video, guys, podcast. We thank you so very much for joining us and for listening, and we will see you in the next one.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.